Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the second part of Prep for Post-Grad Study with your mentor, Chantelle Hale, and myself, Shane Murphy. As always, we will just switch off the voice for about the next 5 minutes while everybody shuffles in. Wish us good evening, tell us where you're coming from, and maybe describe some of the things that you might like to hear about today in the session. And we'll be back with you in about 3 or 4 minutes when the numbers have come up a little. Speak soon. Don't forget to put your chat, set it to send to everyone before you start chatting away, because otherwise only we'll see it, and that won't be that helpful. Speak in a minute. Good evening once again, and I can see that we have people from all over the world, from Sydney, Brisbane, South Australia here in Australia, to Nigeria and Zimbabwe, where it must be fairly early in the morning, PNG, and all sorts of other places. So first off, I'd like to start by paying our respects to the First Peoples of our country and to all their elders, past, present, and emerging. In our case, where we broadcast from is Naarm or Melbourne, and that is the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. Thank you for joining us for the second of our webinars of preparation for postgraduate study, a short course presented by IT Masters on behalf of Charles Sturt University. My name's Shane Murphy, and I'll be your MC for the webinar, and your mentor is our dynamic CEO, Chantelle Hale. Wherever you are watching this, we hope you are safe and well. You'll also see Lil in the comments doing the moderation and sending out information. And please welcome Lil along during the course of the evening. Please remember to always set your chat to everyone rather than to hosts and panelists, so that we can all see what you've got to say. Often there are people in the group that have got things to contribute, and there's a lot of interchange goes on as well. The recordings for this will be available tomorrow, on our website and on YouTube, so feel free to have a listen to them again. Obviously, we prefer when people are here to listen because it gives us more people to talk to, more interaction. As we have a relatively small group this time, it's likely that we'll be able to get to nearly all the questions, and I'd hope to do so. Chantelle has made a bit of a promise there. We use Zoom and we encourage you to do the questions. Remember, when you're asking a question that you'd like Chantelle to address, please use the Q&A link on the bottom of the screen, and otherwise use chat for chatting to each other. For those who have never taken part in any of our short courses, welcome again. IT Masters are a training organisation that exists as a partner to Charles Sturt University, and we work with them to create and deliver a number of master's courses, primarily in IT, but also project management and other areas. We market these courses on their behalf and hope that the best way to do that is to give some of the knowledge away for free, which is what these short courses are. If we do a good enough job, then maybe you'll be encouraged to enroll in some of our full master's courses or our graduate certificates, both of which are certified by TEXA, the Australian Universities Regulatory Body. With that said, we want this course to be useful and rewarding in itself. We want you to learn some interesting information, have a bit of fun, and hopefully make connections with some of your fellow students. You may also have noticed, if you've been doing other courses, that we have made a few changes to our learning platform, learn.itmasters.edu. We hope it's a better, sleeker experience for you, and we've tried to make it better than before. For example, you can now reset your own passwords. We have some new courses, and we actually have a plan to upgrade many of the courses that have been around for more than 4 or 5 years over the next 2 or 3 years. So we'll be doing half again as many short courses live as we usually do in a year. Normally we do about 4, we'll be doing 6 the next 2 or 3 years at least. And tonight's course is sort of one of those. It adds more than replaces our original Preparing for University Study short course from a few years ago. Most of the content in that is still good, but we've just tried to update it and have some more useful references, particularly with the changes that are going on in the academic world with the advent of AI and other automation processes. As I said, Lil's around tonight in her usual moderation role. She's also responsible for the learn.itmasters.edu.au website, which is where you'll find all the stuff you need from tonight, links to readings, discussion forums, quizzes, etc. If you have any questions, feel free to buzz them through. In the meantime, I've blathered on too much. It's time to welcome Chantelle, and many of you will know Chantelle as our CEO and done courses before, perhaps with her. Please make her welcome in the chat.
Good evening, everybody, or good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to our webinar tonight. Hopefully, I can present with you with some information that I've learned in all my years of online study. But if you have any questions, as Shane said, put them in the chat and I'll see if I can answer them. I can't promise to answer every single question because I don't have all the knowledge in the world, but I hopefully will give you something that you didn't know before. So again, we're just going to quickly cover over the what is this short course about. So as I said last week, we've got quite a few students who haven't ever studied at a postgraduate or even an undergrad level, and we wanted to give them some of the tips and tricks so that they can get to learning the material rather than learning how to write an essay and stumbling over that. Because there's not much IT content here, because it's not subject content, this course is not eligible for our one free industry credit into your postgraduate degree, but we have many of those available on our learn.itmasters.edu.au website. And if, as I said, if you complete 3 of those, you're eligible for 1 credit into your graduate certificate or master's with us. And this one is mostly focused on online learning. One of the things I could have put here that I didn't, somebody had talked a little bit about how to research. That is a little part of this. I hopefully will present you with some information on how to research and how to evaluate a source to make sure that it's appropriate for you. But as our courses are coursework oriented, so obviously you have to do research, obviously you have to find your own sources. It does mean that we don't have research masters, so this course itself will not focus entirely much on research. Hopefully that's not too disappointing, but I do think you can find some really good information in here, I hope, anyway. So last week we covered a lot of the social aspects of studying, how to make your life work while you study. And this week we're going to look into some of the more nitty gritty, how to write an assignment, how to approach an assignment, how to reference, how to evaluate sources for credibility, as I said, using Turnitin, all that sort of thing, just making sure that you can actually complete an assignment. As I said, there are several students in our IT Masters courses who have never studied at a postgraduate or undergrad level. So sometimes the how to structure an essay isn't in their wheelhouse because they've only written, emails and reports for their boss or whatever in the past, however many years. So let's focus on some of those skills and see if we can get you over those hurdles so that you can get to learning about the things you're interested in. So I'm going to dive right in and talk about some of the common types of assessment, just so that for those of you who haven't studied in a while, you can remember. And we have most of these in our courses. Obviously, essays is the obvious one. We've all done essays, and some people say, oh, your courses, why do they have essays if they're focused on IT and blah, blah, blah. And not every subject has essays, but it is one of those things where part of the reason a lot of subjects will still have these is because it is sometimes the easiest way to test your critical analysis of a topic, to get you to answer a question, to present evidence to back your thoughts up, to come up with your own point of view, analyzing the material that you're being presented. Then you might have reports or case studies. So often we'll give you a real life scenario that you'll have to approach and, again, come up with evidence to support your point of view, trying to integrate what you've learned into how you would use this in a real life situation. And these may mimic what you create in the real world if you work in the area you're studying, but they may not, and usually there'll be a format for you in them. We also have labs. I think those are often the most fun for students because they get to play around with IT things. And I think that can be really exciting. And in other courses, you'll have different labs that are real world practice of things. But what you usually find is at a postgrad level, you will need to then analyze what you've learned. So you can't just learn how to do something. The AQF level 8, I believe, is the master's level that we teach at, requires you not just to be able to do a task, but to be able to put higher level thought into it. So you probably will have to do more than that. You might have to do presentations, and these can be really feared, but often are really valuable because there isn't many workplaces where you don't have to present at some stage, or at least communicate really effectively. I'm going to talk a little bit about annotated bibliographies later, not because you'll have to do them, but because they're actually a really useful way to study. So I'll talk a little bit about those later. You might have quizzes as you go through, and this short course here has 2 short quizzes as a way to get your final exam, or your final certificate. Sorry, there is no final exam because it is not available for credit. And those are often, sorry, I've got labs twice, I just realized. Those are often quizzes that are just a test of your knowledge there where it is. I'm going to step over the second labs and we'll cover proofreading soon. But then there's exams, which is, that end of session summation of knowledge. Not every subject you'll study, depending on where you study, but if you study with us, not every subject will have exams. They are useful, but most of them these days are open book because there isn't a situation where you have to remember everything immediately. Usually you have access to further areas of information.
I think it's, you sure that the double labs wasn't a test? Because nobody's picked it up and mentioned it. But
yeah, it was definitely a test. Yeah, yes. Absolutely.
I have noticed that a couple of people who I've spoken to who have done our courses have actually done major projects and reports and things that they have used in their work. One student I was talking to had done a large IoT type project as part of the networking or cloud course, I'm not sure which, and had then gone on and applied that in the business that they were working for, which was a government, Quango, and where they were monitoring water all over the area where their council was.
That sounds really interesting. And it is also the best way to learn. 100% of the time, like I find, if students are implementing what they learn every day into their workplace or into their life in some way, they'll remember it so much better. Whereas when I studied my undergrad and I wasn't using, say, the business subjects that I was learning in my day-to-day life, it's harder to keep that information in your brain. And then occasionally, 2 decades later, I go, oh yeah, I did study this. I remember this. So when you write an assessment, when you approach your assessment, there are a few key things you need to think about before you just start writing. The number one thing is to understand what your subject lead, your subject coordinator, your mentor, the teacher, the lecturer, whatever it's called, whoever is going to be marking the assessment, you have to understand what they want. And usually, hopefully that's in the question that's being asked, but it is one of those things that students do a lot. They don't mean to, they're just trying to do their best, but they'll answer the question they think is being asked or they want to be being asked because they can answer that question. That's not going to get you very far. What you need to do is answer the question that is being asked of you. So that is a really key one. Write down the question it is, underline some keywords, discuss it with somebody else. Really make sure that you're answering the right question and not just what you hope the question is. The next one is, how much is the assessment worth? If your assessment's worth 10%, how much time should you spend on it compared to an assessment that's worth 50%? I'm not saying that the 50% one needs 5 times as much time, but it might do. 10% often needs very little time. And if you find you're putting like 20 hours into a 10% assessment, maybe something's gone wrong. What are the marking criteria and what are they worth? And this is getting down into that, how much is this assessment worth, into a bit more of the nitty gritty. So every assignment will have usually marking criteria. So I shouldn't say every, but most assessments will have marking criteria and they're broken into percentages. So, answering one question might be worth 20% and answering another question might be worth 10%. So you should spend more time on the 20% question than the 10%. It seems really basic, but often people focus again on what they can answer, not what is being asked of them. And if they can answer the 10% question, they'll spend a bit more time on it because it's easier. So really focus on that one. Then what's the word count? This is really annoying. It's not something you really have to deal with as much in the workplace. Sometimes someone will say, give me 1 page on this, but that 1 page is usually a bit flexible. You can play around with it a bit. You don't usually hear, give me 500 words on this. And if you submit 700 words, they go, no, it's too many words. At least that's not been my experience. So the word count's a really good gauge of how detailed you should be. And if you find yourself really cannot meet the word count, it might be a sign that you've missed something. So pay attention to that. And if you find yourself going over the word count by a lot, maybe you're going into too much detail. Or maybe you're just really verbose. It's hard to know. Shane, were you a over the word count or under the word count person?
Depended on what was going on, really. I could, some things would be over the word count. Other times I would struggle. And when I did an exam, it was unreadable anyway.
I had a friend who was always over the word count. I was always under the word count. And I could never understand it. And part of it was that I needed more detail sometimes, but part of it was just different people. But work out which one you are, but also try and pay attention to what they're asking of you. And that last one, are there updates to expectations? So hopefully the information you're given at the start of a subject, in IT Masters, it's a subject outline, is complete and has all the information you need to complete your assessment. But often you'll find somebody asks a question on the forums or somewhere else in the lectures, and it gives you more clarity on the assessment. So pay attention to those questions and do ask your own questions if you have them. And remember, as I said it last week, but the earlier you go to somebody with a problem or a question, the better. Because if you go to your mentor with a question really early, then they will know that you're paying attention. They will have time to answer it properly, and you'll have time to implement that into your work. Somebody did ask, before I move on, guidance on number of references for word count, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, etc. It really does depend on the assessment, but a good rule of thumb is 1 per 100 or 200 words. So you should have, in a 1,000-word assessment, you should have more than 5 probably. But definitely, if you've got 20, you've probably gone overboard. But it does depend on the assessment. Some of them lend themselves to lots of references, and some of them do not. Some of them have a lot more of your own personal analysis, which means that there's not as many references in there, if that makes sense. And on word count, I think I said it before, but I'll just reiterate. Don't forget, 10% above or below is really the good guide there. If you go more than 10% above, you can lose marks. We do that at IT Masters, and it's in the interest of fairness to everyone else, because if you have more words to say your point, then it's easier for you to get there. Alrighty then. Moving on, I'm just going to click that I answered that question. So, as much as we don't want too many essays, you will have to do some. And this sort of structure here does kind of apply for most written assessments, not just essays, but it is a really good way to approach your first ever essay or any essay. So firstly, I talked about it before, but find out what they're really asking you. Circle keywords and phrases, be clear about what the task is, put it into your own words, maybe even talk to a friend about it and make sure that you're answering the right question. The question itself might have hints about the structure. How many parts are there to it? Where can things lie? Next up, brainstorm. Put all of your ideas onto one page. What do you already know? Where are there gaps in your knowledge? Find out where the middle of the essay might be so you can plan it out, but just all on one page. Mind maps, those sort of things can be really useful to work out what the answer might be. Once you've brainstormed, then you can go back and research generally, you know, recommended texts that you've got from your subject, you know, books from the library that are recommended in your readings, but also from the articles you've read. They can often link to other articles or other texts. Notes as you go might have the referencing details and page numbers for what you need. So keep those and just try and find the extra research so that you can get an answer to the question they're asking. Next up, plan the essay. So structure your essay, and we'll talk a little bit about that next, but organize the information. So use headings to work out where things should go. And often that marking rubric might be a good place to start for headings to make sure that you're really covering everything. So headings may not be included in your final piece, but you can include them as you write so that you know that you've covered everything. Make sure you've got, you know, the main points in their relationship to the question, and then those secondary points that may come up as you try and answer the question. Keep references as you plan the essay. Like if you find things, make sure that you've got all of the details that you think might be included. You may not include all of them in the end, but have them all into that structure that you've got so that you can keep adjusting as you go ahead. And then after you've done a plan, you need to research some more because you'll have realized that you're missing information on this part. You really do want to have as much information as possible before you start to write, because if you write on the fly, you might get an answer that is somewhere far from what could be a good answer. So research as much as possible, and then it's time to sit down and write. Use your detailed plan. A lot of people write the body first and then the conclusion and then the introduction, because the conclusion is meant to sum up everything, and the introduction is meant to introduce you to the topic, and we'll talk a little bit about that one. But it's a good way to make sure that everything that you've covered in your essay is covered in that conclusion, instead of just forgetting what you've done by the time you get there. Expect to write several drafts. So if instead of sitting down and trying to look for the exact right word when you're writing the essay, maybe you write a paragraph and it's not quite right. You could even include a little comment on it if you're using Word or a word processing program that allows for that. But get everything down, and the more you get down, the better things will be. And I think we talked about it last week, and you don't want to lose your essay, but often things are better if you have ever experienced writing a piece of work, an essay or whatever, and then for some reason you lose that copy. When you rewrite it, it's better, because you've got all the information that you come to later as you're writing, as you're making your points. So expect to rewrite, expect to review.
There's formal research done on that too, in that they set up 2 teams of people, and one team were told, just do the best piece of work you possibly can. And other people in the other group were told, just write any old rubbish, but just write as much as you possibly can. The people who were told to write the best piece they could and to minimize the amount of stuff actually wrote far worse, and in fact often never finished the tasks regularly. The people who just wrote any old stuff and just continued to write and write and write produced work that was far better structured, more organized, answered the questions, or did what it was meant to do far better. So draft, draft, and draft again. I think I jokingly said my marks went up at least 1 to 2 grades just simply by using a word processor for the first couple of times, rather than writing it out by hand and not going back ever again to correct anything. It makes a huge difference. Draft, draft, and draft again.
Yeah, as you're writing through your first draft, don't let perfection be the enemy of good or done. And this will really help if you use the tips from last week about planning out your time as well. Because unfortunately, if you leave your essay to the last minute and you're writing until 11:30, you can't edit the same way. So if you can, pretend that it's due a week before it's due, and then you've got editing time, you will have a better piece of work. As you're writing, include your references as you go. And we're going to talk a little bit later about some of the tips and tools that you can use to organize your references. But definitely, if you put a reference in your work, an in-text citation, put it down into a references list or some sort of app or tool as you're going, so that you don't end up not including something in the end of essay citation list. And speaking of that list at the end and the admin pages, Mukta has pointed out in the questions that admin pages are not counted towards the total word count. Cover page should mention the total word count, and often the list of references don't count towards the total word count, but you should confirm as you write any essay, because it really does depend on who you're writing it with, what university you're with, whether those things count towards your word count. So that is just one of those little notes there. Work out what's in your word count before you think that you've done it all and that everything's within word count. All right then, keeping on. So structuring your essay, and we all know the basics of this one. Introduction, and this is the piece that informs your reader about the purpose and direction of your essay. So it'll include the general topic and some background context. It'll have the focus of your work, and it'll show the reader what areas of the general topic will be discussed. It'll show the purpose of your essay, what approach you might be taking to answer the question, an outline of the stages for the discussion. So the main ideas and the order they're going to be presented in. A thesis statement indicating the position that you'll be taking in relation to the assignment question, and maybe some limitations that control the discussion. It does sound like a big piece here, the introduction, but it is really important. Don't worry about spoiling the ending of your work. this is an academic piece, it's not a fiction novel, you can use your introduction to really spell out what you're going to say. And then in the body, you prove it. You have paragraphs that lead into each other that are connected, and they each contain one idea as an initial topic sentence, followed by sentences that contain properly cited evidence to support your idea, and then analysis or interpretation of the connection between the idea and the evidence presented. So I'll talk a little bit more about paragraph structure in the next slide, but it is really key as you're writing to think about who's going to, the person marking your assessment, and making sure that they can get all of your key points out of your work as they read through it. If you have paragraphs that are poorly structured, that don't make the thesis statement really clear, so the thesis statement is the key thing that you're going to prove in this paragraph. If that's not really clear, it makes it harder to read your essay and potentially give you the marks that you really need there. And then obviously it ends with the conclusion that should contain no new information. That is a really important one. Any new information in the conclusion means that you should have included that during the essay itself. Have a summary of what you consider were the main points of your discussion, and how these main points relate to each other, and then to your thesis statement to prove what you're saying. And so if you just read the introduction and the conclusion of an essay, it really should give a good overview of the essay's main points and the main claims you're making, and sort of tie it all together. And then at the end, you've got that references page. So it's an alphabetical list of the sources that are used in your in-text citation. It's a separate page at the end of the essay. And most work that requires referencing will have extra marks for correct referencing. And I think I said it before, but use your essay questions in the marking rubric when you structure. It'll tell you how important things are and make sure that you're not forgetting key areas. If headings aren't allowed in the final piece, don't forget you can include them and take them out at the end to make sure everything's been covered, to see that you've spent enough time talking about a certain area. So as I said before, structuring your paragraphs, and this is something hopefully you do naturally as you write in a workplace or just in life, but some people don't. Some people haven't had much of an opportunity to write longer pieces in a while. So it is a key thing to think about here, is that Peel, this Peel mnemonic device is a good one to look at your essay. So you start with your thesis statement. What is this paragraph going to say? What's the main idea? Evidence. For everything you say in an essay or a piece of academic work, you need supporting evidence. From your research that we talked about earlier, it can be paraphrased, it can be summarized or directly quoted, but it needs to be there. And then you'll have those in-text citations that are included at the end of your work. Analysis. So once you've included the evidence that supports your statement, you need to include your own analysis. It's not just a bunch of quotes. An essay is your work, what you think, what you have discovered. But even though it's been what you think, what you've discovered, it should be written in the third person so that your writing has that academic style that is pretty important. And then last but not least, the link to the next paragraph. How does your paragraph flow onto the next one? Often it can take a little bit of maneuvering, but it is really important to make your essay feel like it is all one piece instead of just fragmented sections moving from part to part. Shane, I don't know if you had any thoughts on this one, seeing as you've seen my professional writing more than most people.
I wouldn't comment on that. I think the thing that I always try and do when I'm trying to write longer things, whether it's a work document or an essay, is you're telling a story in one way or another. Now, it's a story that's based in fact, and it needs to be evidenced, and you need analysis as part of it. But what you're trying to do is take your reader on a journey with you. and you go from point A to point B, maybe via, all around the world or very directly. It depends on what the purpose of the assignment is. But you're always trying to take your people along. So it has to be not only, just go, this is this, then that is that. You're trying to engage the reader in the process. And that helps demonstrate that you've understood the work as well.
Absolutely. And it goes back to, I think of the person who's marking your assessment. You're trying to convince them of your point of view. And being persuasive can take a little bit of work sometimes, but as Shane said, yeah, take them on that journey. And so we had Kavita spoke a little bit in the Q&A about the recommended writing style, academic versus plain English. So workplaces do focus on plain English writing. That is absolutely true. You'll find most of the time at a university, unless the assessment specifically says, this is a report to your boss, this is meant to be an email that is informal, academic writing style is usually for the best. They'll tell you if it's not meant to be academic writing style. So just assume it is until it's not. And yes, some of these rules might seem really old-fashioned, but the reason they're there is just so that you can come across as a knowledgeable person presenting your work. So avoiding contractions. So write, cannot instead of can't, does not instead of doesn't. Again, it's just so that your work feels more authoritative. Write in the third person. So one of the rules to remember is that when you've put together all your pieces, you've got your evidence, and you're like, well, I think this means this. Anything in your work that is not referenced is assumed to be something you think. Don't add, I think, just say, here's the evidence, therefore, this is the conclusion to that. So speak in the third person, just unless there's some reason not to. Avoid slang. It just undermines your argument if you do. You can use online thesauruses to come up with equivalent words. That can be really helpful. And in opposition to the, don't say I think, write tentatively. So formal academic writing is usually a little cautious when presenting findings, because most theories and ideas are open to interpretation. So, you could say this may, or this means it is likely, it is possible, those sort of things, just so that you're not making absolute statements for things that may not have absolute statements. Next one is use reporting words. So when you're telling people about the research of others, instead of saying, Smith said that, you could say, Smith argued that, Smith reported that, mentioned, declared, explained, those sort of things. Said, for some reason, it just doesn't have the same significance. It doesn't have the same meaning. There are lots of different words that can make your meaning clear and also just look more academic again. Write concisely, which apparently I do because I was always, struggling to get to the word limit. But it means that don't use a roundabout statement. In the event that could be replaced with if. Due to the fact that could be replaced with because. Don't include extra words just for the sake of it, because it will end up making you look a little bit wishy-washy. Use your own voice. So when you write, put your own language into it as much as you can without it being academic, but also just don't rely on quotes too much. Paraphrase the work of others, which we're going to talk about later, but summarize what's being said. If you include too many quotes, it feels like your essay is just a collection of quotes rather than your own work. Somebody has asked, can I write my or we? Only if the essay really calls for it, if it's a report on something you've been doing, but generally leave that out. it really does depend on the context there. All right then. Next up. So when you're studying, sorry, I heard Shane's mic. Nope. Every university will have access to online databases and libraries. If they don't, there's something wrong there. And the thing about this is, if you just search online, if you just go to Google and put in your point of view, they may not be reputable sources. They may not be peer-reviewed. They may not be evidence-based. If you go to your library database and search in something that's relevant, not only will you get some good links to other things, but you can actually tick to include peer-reviewed sources. And it is really important to make sure that you're getting really good resources so that when you're linking to things, it is actually relevant and useful. So I'm gonna change my screen around and show you, this is the CSU screen. 1 second. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
This is the CSU database. One of our subjects this session is cyber warfare and terrorism. So if you search for this, obviously there are a lot of different articles, but then you can change things around so that it is from 2015 because that's useful. I only want available online because I'm not in any of the rural New South Wales areas. And I can go peer-reviewed journals. And already it comes up with a bunch of different options that might be useful for an overview of the topic. It might be something that can create, that can inform without providing much misinformation. But then you can also get often inside the actual essay itself, the article itself, often there are links to other journal articles that you might like to read. So this is a really good place to start. Refine your search, make sure you're searching for the right thing. Sorry, we'll go over that a bit later. Because obviously searching for cyber warfare isn't going to come up with much. But the essay that students are asked to write at the start of this is about defining cyber warfare and terrorism. So you might whittle it down that way. But it is usually the best place to start. And if you're at a university that doesn't have much of a database, a library database, maybe, think about the quality of that university. I will go back to the slides if I can find them.
The Charles Sturt Library is reputedly very good. A number of people have commented on it.
Yes, I've had friends who are like, can I use your access? I need this journal article really bad. And CSU has it. So it's a really key factor in when you're studying. It is not like when I was in high school and you had to go to the library to get most resources. And when Shane was in high school and you had to go to libraries to get all the resources, I imagine.
Oh, yeah. Well, they were on chalk.
Microfiche.
Oh, yes, microfiche. Yes, that was a thing.
And do remember, those abstract executive summaries are going to be really helpful as you search through, because the whole idea of an executive summary is it tells you everything about that. So you can see, oh, that's the basic idea that they're studying. If I read through this, I'll get more information on that. Somebody did ask, would it be possible for you to share a good example sample essay written in academic writing? That's a really good one. I might have to source something and put it onto the learn.itmasters website.
I think it's
find
important.
Something that's available to share.
Yeah, and I think it's important with that as well to note that when you're looking at what might be a good example is that there are a myriad of good examples and they can be extraordinarily different from each other, but they still will all comply with all the things you've been saying about being concise, being to the point, answering the question properly, finding all of that sort of information?
Yes, there's a lot of different ways to write an essay, or to answer a question. The key thing is to try and remain as academic in nature as possible, and then to come up with something that is a bit, that still fits within your voice, within your style as well, because you're creating this work and you don't want them to come to you and say, did you really create this? Know what you're saying and follow some of those simple rules, and it should usually find your academic style. So when you do search for work, and it may not be in your library database, it could be on Google Scholar, it could just be on Google, you do have to examine whether your sources are credible. Not everything written on the internet is true. We all know this. Hell, not everything written in a journal article is true, but I do think this is one of the key ways that I've seen to evaluate sources for credibility and relevance. The first one is currency. So when was the article, the book, whatever, published? I'm not saying anything that's 20 years old is completely useless, but if something is talking about, cyber warfare and it's 25 years old, it may only be useful to a certain extent. And that does depend on whether currency really matters for this topic, because obviously there are some topics that haven't been updated all that frequently. We have one of our subjects, marketing solutions, where we still use a very old textbook because it hasn't really been updated or changed in years. And I'm not saying we don't add extra things to it, but it is saying currency is one point that you can consider, but you also have to consider whether currency is important to this topic and whether currency is important to that particular reference. Relevance. So does the information that you're reading actually answer the question you're being asked, or your question? And who is it made for? Is it at a master's level if you're studying a master's? Or if it's way too beginner, then maybe the information in there won't be all that helpful for you. Have you looked at a bunch of sources while you're evaluating the relevance of this one? And would you be comfortable if somebody examined this reference to see what sources you used? The next one is authority. And so that is who created this information, who's the source, what are their credentials, what do they know? Obviously, not everyone who is an expert on a topic is a PhD, but if somebody is talking about a topic, you'd hope they'd have some sort of authority to speak about it. Do they have credentials? Do they work in the area? Do they have any reason to know what they're talking about? And you can tell by the URL sometimes whether the author or source is particularly authoritative on the area. So .com is meant to be a commercial website. .edu is an educational website. .gov is a government one. .org is meant for not-for-profit organizations. So find out where it's from, where's the website listed, to sort of judge the authority of the source. Then accuracy. So I don't know if you've ever read something and been like, I don't know if they know what they're talking about when it comes to their overall thesis, but I've noticed a few small errors here, and a few small errors often mean there might be larger errors. So is it supported by evidence? Can you vouch for the accuracy of what you're reading? Is the language and tone free from bias? Maybe there are spelling or grammatical errors, and that, isn't a great sign in the end when it comes to references for an academic piece. And the last one there is purpose. So why was this created, and what is the purpose of the piece? Is it meant to, inform or teach? Great. But is it meant to entertain the audience? Is it meant to persuade the audience? Because if the author hasn't made their intentions very clear, it could be that it is meant to persuade something that is not necessarily accurate or useful. It could be a fact fact piece, it could be propaganda. So make sure you can look at the information and go, why was this created and where are the biases coming from? Because everyone has bias when they write, but acknowledging those biases is maybe one of the first steps in making sure that it's not completely overtaking your work. There could be political, ideological, cultural, religious, whatever biases, but make sure that you know where they might be, so that you can evaluate why this work was created and what they're hoping to do. Next up, so I mentioned an annotated bibliography before, and one of the reasons I brought this up, in my studies, I was asked to create one of these for a subject, and it is basically a list of references with a short, paragraph or two, really talking about a summary and or analysis of the references, that's just why it's useful, what does it say. What I found really useful about this is it helps me evaluate how credible a source is, how much I should be using it in my work, but also at the same stage, it allows me, if I include an annotated bibliography as I study, when I go back to write my essay, I can go, oh yeah, that one journal article said this, and I already have all of the citation needed. I can go back to that article, I can find it easily. I have this one document. So I think it's something worthwhile looking into. It's not for everyone, but I do think it's pretty useful. Sorry, I'm just going to take a second to cough. Sorry about that.
Wait for the CAAP framework.
Yeah, I didn't pronounce it out loud just because I didn't think it was particularly academic or professional. So moving on to referencing, plagiarism. So plagiarism, which we've all heard the word, and for most people new to studying, it brings to mind, I copied an entire essay. I copied I maliciously copied someone else's work. Most of the time, it actually it's not as big as that, but it is still really serious and something you need to avoid. So it could be submitting complete work that is not your own. Maybe you paid someone to write your essay, which often gets discovered and it never ends well. You could have copied sections from somewhere else, just like a website or a journal article, but you didn't reference them. You could have paraphrased work from another journal article. Instead of copying and pasting an entire paragraph or a sentence, you could have paraphrased work from somewhere else, but just not included the referencing data that's needed there. It could be self-plagiarism, which sounds silly because you wrote it. It should be yours. But if you wrote it in a previous essay, you can't just copy and paste those paragraphs into your next essay. So that is something really important to make sure that you aren't, accidentally doing that, even if you've already answered that question. Everything needs to be included with references there. So there's source-based plagiarism. So that's when you cite an incorrect paper or source or something that doesn't even exist. So you create a misleading reference to back up what you're saying. Accidental plagiarism, which is where you didn't properly take notes as you were reading through and you remember, it could be you remember something and you put it into your essay without referencing, even though you didn't copy it from the journal article that was on the screen, but it's somebody else's thought. Collusion, that's when you and a friend, maybe you're doing the same assignment, so you sit down and do it together, but you include work that the other person has come up with, so you're not referencing there. And then last but not least, we've got AI. Here's the thing about AI. AI is great. It's really useful at work, can be really useful to sort out thoughts. Unfortunately, at this stage, most universities will say you can't use AI unless previously said, previously given permission, written permission to use AI. So maybe we're just talking about something as innocent as Grammarly, which can rephrase sentences for you. But even that, unfortunately, the university says no, the university says no. You have to pay attention to what the university is saying and follow their rules, because if you get caught, plagiarism can have really severe effects. So we're trying to implement AI in several of our subjects, where it could be, here's what AI interpreted this question as, make that answer better, because that's how you're going to use it in the workplace. But for CSU and for most universities, the rule is you can't use AI unless it is specifically stated. As time goes by, you know, AI gets more and more undetectable, but at the same stage, we still catch some students using AI because it doesn't answer the question. It's something we've found time and time again. If a student puts something into AI, often it comes up with this really vague sort of answer, and the marker is like, they're talking about the topic, but they are not answering the question being asked. And maybe that's the student not answering the question being asked, or maybe it's AI often these days tends to talk around a topic. So not only is it not allowed, it's not often the best answer. Sorry, I thought I heard Shane again. I have to keep an ear out for him.
Sorry, no, I did not say anything. But AI is, it is interesting because AI is becoming more and more used in things like marketing, in which I work extensively, and we use it often to create some straw man drafts of things, and then we completely rewrite them.
Yeah, I've definitely seen it used time and time again in the real world. And the benefit of that is then you get to have something to start, a jumping off point.
Exactly.
Which is why I think even one of our marketing assignments is, you can use AI as long as you reference it and show us what AI produced and what you produced. Because I've never seen AI produce something usable on the first question.
Yes, there's a very clear skill towards using it in an effective manner.
Yeah. All right, then. So we're going to talk a little bit about referencing, and this is done to avoid plagiarism. One of the key things to remember is everything you put in your essay that isn't referenced is you saying, I came up with this. This is my idea. This is my thought. So it can be other people's words that you need to reference, obviously, but it could also be materials or ideas, something you've summarized there. Distinctive words borrowed from another source, images, diagrams, ideas, songs, computer programs. A lot of things can be referenced, and it is really vital at university. If you do not reference correctly, you can get in a lot of trouble. And this is any university ever. Universities can revoke your degree if they go back and discover that you haven't correctly referenced. And by that, I usually mean you've actually committed, you've gotten someone else to write your essay, or you've copied something completely. But it is better to err on the side of safety when it comes to referencing. So there are two main ways to reference during your work. You can paraphrase it, so you can put it into your own words, and you still need to reference it when you've done that, but you can just reword something, or you can include it in quotation marks, like an entire sentence, whole cloth, that of course needs to be referenced as well. We're going to talk a little bit about APA 7s. That's because that's what Charles Sturt University uses. There are a lot of different ways to reference. You'll find out which way to reference at the start of your studies usually. But most of the time, they include the same information, just in different ways. So it's generally laid out: author, date, title, and retrieval, how to get it. So with a book, it's author, initial of the author, the year, title of the work, publisher. You can see journal article there as well. These are examples of how to lay it out. I'm not going to give you an example of every single one, because that would take a very long time. There are so many different things you can reference. And one of the key things that I found really useful when it comes to referencing is using different sources, or also different referencing guides. And I'm going to show you through a few of those when we get to that section there. But so while you're referencing, in-text citations are included while you write. So you include the information about where to find the reference in your reference list at the end of your work. So you start with the in-text citations, and then you go back, you've got the reference list here that has further information, so that anyone reading through your work, when you say, you know, Murphy 2024 said blah, 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 they can find that through your reference list. So I've got an example here. These are 3 references here that might be in text citation included like this. And you can see how it is a bit finicky to include references. So often citation tools will be really useful, but you can see that I've tried to include the in-text citations as written out in 3 different ways. When there are 3 or more authors, you use et al. So there are a lot of conventions towards this that make it more confusing than you wish they were. But you'll find you can lose a few marks if you don't reference correctly. So I have several tools here that might be useful because I'm bad at referencing. I don't know if you are, but a lot of people are. So there are plugins for Word or for whatever word processing tool you use. There are websites you can use. They are not perfect. You have to go through and check them yourself. You can't just copy and paste and hope for the best, because especially with the copying and pasting, it is not always perfect. But what you'll see here is that there are several different ways. So CSU has EndNote available for free for their students, but Zotero is free. Mendeley's first level is free, but there's a premium one. And you can see those websites there. Academic Help is free. BibMe has a subscription at $9.95 a month. Citation Machine has a free version and a premium membership available. And Cite This For Me has a free version with you get 15 references and save the citations for 7 days. And then they have a premium subscription version. I would recommend using something to keep your references because as you write your work, one of the easiest things, if you keep your references as you write, then you don't have to worry about going to the end and being like, okay, how many references do I include? How many different ones were there? So I thought I would open up, even just Cite This For Me, and you guys can have a little look at it. New share. So it is just a really simple create citations. Where were we? We had this one here, trifecta of cyber warfare, whatever, whatever, whatever. If we were going to reference this, we can just search it. I think it's a book. Let's find it. Okay, maybe it's not. It's a journal. Oh, sorry, it's a journal article. Here you go. So you can just go cite, continue. They'll have the information here, all of the details, complete citation. Choose your style, and this will have, so that's copy citation and copy in-text citation. And then if you're using the premium version of this, if you're using EndNote, if you're using any one of those citation companies that I listed, so I'm just going to do a new share of the PowerPoint slides. You have your list of references so that it just makes it easier for you at the end of your studies to go, okay, I don't have to search through all of my journals that I have photocopied or whatever it is, however it used to work back when I was in high school. to come up with all of the referencing information. I don't know how it worked when you were in school, Shane.
It was pretty much the same. It's just we
Yeah.
didn't have all the tools. You had to look up books and copy stuff down. But it's pretty much the same now. It's just all that's happened is that all of these tools make it so much faster and easier, which means you've got so much less excuse for not being able to reference things exactly and precisely and quickly.
So check out some of these tools. Most of them come fairly highly recommended. As I said, some of them have premium versions that you have to pay for. Some of them are free. Find whatever works for you, and make sure that you end up keeping references as you study and as you write your essay. Don't get to the end of it and have to collect them all together. There are a lot of strange little rules. So somebody asked before about referencing images. I'm just going to try and find.
That was one of the early things.
Yes. And so I was going to share, this is the CSU tool. Hopefully you can see it. I can zoom if you can't. So they have their academic referencing tool. It is obviously, it's fairly comprehensive because there's a lot of different ways that you can click on things, and you can see, click on book and it has however many authors, etc., etc. One of the things they do have there is audiovisual material, clip art or image. And so this has examples of how you might reference an image from a website. So it has the artist, the date, the title of the work, the description, the publisher name. But you can see here, this second example doesn't have an artist because it's clip art. So it just has the title of work, picture of hands, the number. ND means no artist, basically, or no author listed. And then it's the description, clip art, the publisher name, the clip art library, and then the website address. I hope that answers that question about how to reference images, but I just thought that might be useful. So you'll find whatever university you're studying at, they usually have these tools, but if you can't get it at the university you're studying at, you can usually just find it in, whatever style of referencing you're looking at, referencing how to reference an image. You can just Google search that. I hope that answered that question.
I think so. I think it's great that the CSU have that tool.
Awesome.
If you're doing a CSU course, use the tools that are available to you.
All right, then. So we're going to talk a little bit about paraphrasing references and using quotes without plagiarism. So obviously you can include quotes. Anything you include that is just a copied sentence or a copied paragraph needs to be in quotation marks. It needs to be appropriately referenced. If it's a quote, it usually needs a page number. It's not perfect because sometimes there is no page number given. Sometimes it's, a speech or something that just doesn't have page numbers. That's fine. But if you can include a page number, include it. But I've got here, this is copied from an author. I have the reference for this one in the slide notes so that you guys can see it if you need to, but I've also included a reference here. So I'm trying to be appropriate as I teach you guys about referencing. So I am just using this as an example. It's an article that was referenced in one of our students' work. And I was just like, how would we rephrase this sentence further to qualify as cyberterrorism? An attack should result in violence against persons or property, or at least cause enough harm to generate fear. So that's the sentence. I'm like, well, how would we rephrase this using, quotes or not without plagiarizing the work? So you could start here. You could include some of the key phrase in quotes. So for actions to be considered cyberterrorism, so you can see taken further out, I have said, instead of to qualify as cyberterrorism, I've said for actions to be considered terrorism, they must, and then I've included those words in quotes, result in violence against person or property, or at least cause enough harm to generate fear. So with the quotation marks there, it's clear where it came from. It makes sense that those words in the quotation marks were written by somebody else. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone. But the other thing you can do is you can completely rephrase. So when you are including references, often there's a point you want to make, there's something you want to say, and so you can include that point, but in your own words, but still include the reference. So my example here would be, for an incident to be categorized as cyberterrorism, it must lead to violence against individuals or damage to property, or at the very least inflict sufficient harm to instill fear. So some of the words are the same because I can't really take out cyberterrorism. We're talking about the definition of cyberterrorism. Violence is a key word in that one. There are other words you can use, but none of them fit as well. So you don't need to to take out every single word and put in a synonym, but you do need to use appropriate enough different words that it is not going to look like you just copied most of the sentence from the original reference. One of the things you could also then do is swap around the order of the sentence, and it doesn't always work. It's not always possible, but you can see here, I've just rephrased it so that it's completely different from the original and said incidents must lead to violence against individuals or damage to property, or at least inflict sufficient harm to instill fear in order to be categorized as cyberterrorism. Still has the same meaning, but it's around the different way. So it's another way to include when you're paraphrasing, just to make sure that your work is different enough that it shouldn't be in quotation marks. I hope that all makes sense. Shane, I don't know if you can give me the...
Yeah, I look, rephrasing things is one of the most powerful things because it does also, it shows the marker that you've understood it enough to be able to rephrase it into your own words and at the same time acknowledge the place where you got the information, which is what this is all about. It's about demonstrating knowledge, answering the actual question. So,
and I think one of the things there is, even if you're including the same amount of references as somebody else who's including quotes, and they're like, those quotes make my point, as Shane said, when you're reading through those rephrased things, not only will it solidify things in your brain, but it makes it clear to the marker that you have the idea of what the reference is saying without needing to just copy the entire quote. So if you're reading through your work and you notice you've got lots and lots of quotes, sometimes that's not as powerful as putting it into your own words. And sometimes a reference will just refer to an entire paragraph and what that entire paragraph said, and you've condensed it down into a sentence. But I just thought I would show you an example here of how you can rephrase things and potentially avoid any problems with plagiarism claims. Somebody has asked in the questions, what is Turnitin? What does it check? And that's what we're going to cover now. So Turnitin is a database of a bunch of online journals, books, articles. There is millions, maybe billions in there. And what happens is a student submits their paper into Turnitin. Turnitin compares it to everything it has in its database and highlights areas of the paper that are similar to works in their database. And it might be whole sentences, it might be half a sentence, it might be a few words that are the same next to each other. A few words from one paragraph in an article that are all next to each other in your work. And it'll return a similarity report. And this is the percentage of your work that matches other work. So you can see here, I've got an example here that's 13%. The highlights there, that's the reference list. You would hope your reference list is a little bit highlighted because that's included in other people's work. So it's not just a quote that I've included. It's not just, points from other people. This is, I use these references, other people have used these references, so they're included in other people's work. The highlighting does not mean you've done something wrong. But if something is highlighted and it doesn't have a reference to it, it may be a problem. So 25% is often a common number that's used. In Turnitin, it just means that it will be yellow or red when it comes to the Turnitin similarity report. It may indicate a problem. It may also indicate that you've used lots of references. So that question from earlier about how many references should you use in a 1,000-word essay, if you did include 15 references and a few quotes, then maybe your essay is completely fine, but it still comes in at 33% or something. But if you run your essay through Turnitin and you notice sections of it are highlighted and they don't have a reference next to it, that's the time where you should be looking at including a reference and also potentially paraphrasing a bit more. Below 25% could still be a problem. It could mean that you've included a whole chunk from a website, but haven't included many references otherwise. So doesn't mean that it's not a problem if you run it through Turnitin and it's below 25%, but above 25% is when we look a bit more closely. So I have some examples here. So using Turnitin, you may have highlighted sections that are completely innocent. If, for instance, your reference list and in-text citations will probably show up highlighted as similarities. That's completely fine and expected. Quotations, as long as they're appropriately referenced, completely fine to have those come up as similarities. You've got code if you're doing a technical subject. Often there's code, as long as it's appropriately referenced, it's fine. Topics may have a lot of words that can't be paraphrased. And that is, it still needs a reference if you're including information from somewhere else. But like that example on cyber warfare, or cyber terrorism, there is only so much that you can rephrase sometimes when it comes to words. Maybe there's a lot of acronyms being used. Maybe it's a really technical topic. So you have to include those words and you can't just come up with a new one to include it. So it's fine if those are highlighted. It may have included the headings from your essay or the assessment brief and the question. Often that happens, and you can exclude those from a Turnitin paper, from a Turnitin search, so you can see what your actual similarity is, and it's a little less stressful. And then there is, if you've previously submitted your own work to Turnitin to say, okay, how much similarity is here? And then you come back to resubmit and go, okay, I want to see if I've improved, if I've taken out some of these sentences, and it all is highlighted. You're like, oh yeah, that's because I've already submitted this, and Turnitin now has it in their database as work that is too similar. However, on the other side there, you've got their issues that maybe mean you need another look. So if you've got too many quotes, and you won't get done for plagiarism with this one, no, you won't get in trouble for plagiarism, but too many quotes, as we were saying earlier, can often mean that you're not putting enough of your own work there. So really look into that. It could mean that you've tried to paraphrase, but you're still using too much of the original sentence and it should be in quotation marks. Or maybe you need to paraphrase further. It could mean you've included work from previous submissions, which is self-plagiarism. And obviously, it could also just mean you've copied something, but hopefully if you're listening to this, you're not going to do that and you're not going to try and do that. But these are reasons that mean that you need to revisit your work, that you're trying your best, but you have not achieved what you need to in order to be able to submit this assessment. And we're now basically at the end of my slides, and we've got a few questions here. Kavita has asked, is there a short session available to get familiar with library databases and resources? And there are, if you study with CSU, and I'm sure whoever you study with should have one of those. And I think I covered a little bit about how to find quality journal books, websites, references. But there again will be more information on that on your on when you study, I think. Well, if you study with CSU, there will be. If you study with other people, hopefully there will be.
I know
Shane.
Somebody has asked, the anonymous person has asked whether it's worth doing an IT master's degree, to which, of course, the answer can only be yes. But and without being facetious, it is actually a real thing in that people with master's degrees generally earn about 8 to 12% more than their peers without a master's degree. They're able to access higher ranked jobs. In fact, often it's one of the things that can preclude you from getting a promotion, because you might be going up against somebody that has the same work experience with you and the same reputation, but they might have a degree of some sort, a postgraduate degree, a master's, or a graduate diploma, or a certificate or something. And that is the main reason that most people study with IT masters, is that they would like to get ahead in their careers, and they've seen that that is a way of stepping over the stepping up a number of rungs on the ladder without just going through years of work. So yes.
Yes. Besides the joy of further knowledge, which we all love and support, I do think studying a master's qualification does put you ahead of the pack sometimes when it comes to applying for a new job or promotions. And we've always said, even if you just have, I'm working to complete my master's on your resume, often it's still much more significant to potential employees than, oh yeah, I've done my undergrad or whatever it is.
And particularly in IT, there are there's a large pool of people. Maybe some of the people here tonight are in that boat, where they've come into it because they got caught up in the excitement of doing it as a younger person. They work hard for many years at it, learning all the stuff in situ in their job. They might have many certificates, and they get to a point in their career where there is a bit of a border that says without a degree you can't really go any further, or it's certainly preferred. And that's the time that lots of people start looking at the sorts of products that IT Masters offers, the sorts of degrees that we do. And that's why we've created things so that people can actually get into postgraduate study, often without an undergraduate degree. Based on their work experience, you can do a graduate certificate and then find a pathway through to a master's by studying. And also your industry credits can be taken into account. So if you've done certifications in, say, Cisco, CCNA, or one of the ethical hacking certifications, or Microsoft or Amazon, AWS, then they're things that we may give you a credit for. We have a list of over 200 of those sorts of certificates that we've actually compared against our teaching, and we can give various numbers of credits for each of those. There is a list on our website under the credits area, and you can go and look that up. But if you really want to find out, the best thing to do is to submit answers to the eligibility form that we have on our website under itmasters.edu.au/am I eligible. That is
Yes,
the way you find out.
I should have given Shane access to my slides so he can add in all this information instead of just me just talking to a random PowerPoint slide.
Not at all. I think all of that stuff is there on our website. So just have a look at our main website if you're interested in those things. Presumably because you're here, you are interested. And they're the things that we think set IT Masters apart as a university experience, in that we really do try and help our students through the process, while at the same time asking of you a really dedicated effort and a good standard of work. Our students tend to finish their courses at a higher rate than peers in other universities and other courses, and also to get slightly higher marks than most other people, because they're very self-motivated. They know what they're doing. Often they have help from their workplace as well in order to complete it. And that is a magnificent incentive to do it. As well as, there are other things for Australian residents, such as Commonwealth supported placements, which are around at the moment, and they can save you quite a lot of money off the list price as it is of a degree. So instead of paying about $14,000 odd for a graduate certificate, it can be reduced to under $5,000. It can save up to about 70%, and that is likely to change very soon, probably by August, September this year. They might well have disappeared. We'll find out more soon. Anyway, that's the I'm selling to you component of the evening. Are there any more questions? Because I think it's probably time everybody would like to wrap up for the night. It has been a fantastic opportunity to hear all this from Chantelle. I hope you got some good value out of it, and you feel free to look at the website again and have a revisit of it, because I think there's a lot of things in there that will come once you've looked at it a couple of times, particularly if you haven't done study for some period of time or maybe at all.
Yeah, and I think one of the key things that I really wanted to portray to students is, at least with us, and I do think with most universities, we're hoping that that university study isn't quite so walled off and made only for the few these days. With our students, we really do know that you have, partners and kids and jobs and other things that stop you from being able to focus entirely on study. We just want you to be able to get the knowledge and be able to answer the questions without feeling like you can't ask questions, that you can't be somebody new to study while studying with us.
Yeah, it's meant to create an environment to encourage people to learn, and I like what you said before about the joy of gaining new knowledge, because a lot of people do, particularly our short courses. There are many people who have done 20 or 30 of our short courses. We have around 50 plus that have existed or are currently in production, and they are really good sources of information and will do you good stead in lots of places, because most of the courses actually run at postgraduate level. But given that there appears to be no more questions, that must mean that you've been very thorough tonight, Chantelle. Thank you again, Chantelle, for everything. And also a big thank you to Lil for standing by the trenches in the chat and making sure that there was lots of people to say things. Our next short course, for those who are interested, will be on the topic of digital marketing. We are actually revamping and representing a digital marketing course that was set in 2015, and obviously a lot has happened since then, so that will be available in May. And later this month we are proposing to do a short one-session webinar on topics from CompTIA, from the global CompTIA evangelist, who's a cybersecurity expert, and we'll talk about some interesting topics. We're just weighing up a couple of the options at the moment, so watch this space. We will be announcing both of those courses and events in the next couple of weeks. But for tonight, thank you again and have a lovely evening. We will see you next session.